right, maybe, hopefully, I am live the right way this time. Hopefully, I'm live the right way this time. For some reason, I always mess this up. Once again, it was toggled through my phone. Let me just turn this up. I can hear it. All right, so I can hear me, which is awesome. That's good enough for right now. Now, I'm not expecting anyone to join this live stream. Um, I just want to kind of catch you up on an update, kind of talk about my experience with with 9/11. I haven't uploaded a video, I don't think, all week. So that was kind of it. And this is more so kind of like just documenting it, because 20 years from now, if I'm still alive, I'm sure my memory will be kind of foggy. So this is kind of more of me documenting it. If someone jumps on, that's great. If not, I'm just going to talk until I run out of things to say, and then I'll be on my way. Um, I haven't uploaded it all this week. First things first. Maybe you can tell, but my voice is a little weird. Um, for the first time in 2 years, I got sick. I actually had a cold. I got the cold on Tuesday or Wednesday. And, when the kids go to school, they bring back germs. And we've been pretty germ free for 2 years, give or take. And so my voice is a little weird. I've been coughing and sneezing, typical cold. So that's interesting. So I will be taking drinks throughout this, drinks of water throughout this, and hopefully my voice comes back to normal. And just a little bit of my upload process. I normally upload videos or I normally create 5 videos on Saturdays. Um, but past Saturday we had a family emergency. I had I had to get my mom on an airplane, and so that schedule got messed up. And then with being sick and stuff, things kind of just didn't work out. But hopefully going forward, things are going to be much better. Well, let's go ahead and talk about why I created this live stream. Um, so before I talk about the actual day, I think I got to talk about some things that came up before that day. So my mom actually worked for the Department of Defense for. So she's retired now, but she'd worked, I think, 30 years. And so I just kind of need to frame all of this. She used to work the Great Lakes Naval Base, which, if you don't know, it's I I believe it is the largest base, and all of the Navy recruits come through there. And it's about the Great Lakes Naval Base is probably about 20 minutes away from where I grew up. Um, and that's where a good portion of the Kenosha residents, they either they're either in the military with the Navy, or they work for the Navy. They have something to do with the Navy. The biggest employers, and this is just speculation, I don't have any data to back this up. The biggest employers for Kenosha are like Uline, Jockey, the Naval Base, Amazon now. But really, that's it. This is almost like a military town. You would go out to dinner and you'd see people dressed up in their military attire, and so it's not uncommon. If you went over to Gurney Mills, that's basically what you're going to see there: people walking around. Um, so that's one thing. The second thing, and this is, in my opinion, really important, is in Zion there is a nuclear reactor. There now it's decommissioned, or has been decommissioned for some time, but that nuclear reactor is like 10 or 15 miles from where we grew up. And so these are important things to think about when you are processing and working through 9/11. In my opinion, 20 years ago I was 17. I'm 37 now. When you're 17, 18, I was a senior in high school. You kind of feel like you're on top of the world. No one can tell you anything. I knew everything. You're just kind of that type of person. Maybe most people aren't, but I was the type of person where I knew it all. No one could tell me anything. You get in arguments and stuff like that. But in my opinion, um, September 11th is when kind of that naiveness kind of just left because, all of craziness, as you know, happened. So now that you have that in the background, my mom worked on oh, I should say, before September 11th, you could walk on the military base. You could just you could go down to Great Lakes. In fact, there were train stops on the military base. People would catch the Amtrak down, hop right off, and go into work. And when I was younger, I would go into the military base with my mom. When she worked, when she had to work on the base, sometimes I'd go with her. I'd walk down the military base and I'd go play basketball. I'd play basketball with some of the recruits outside. I mean, you could just freely walk on and off and just kind of do your thing, and nobody said anything. Um, so that's another layer to it as well, which is kind of all kind of just plays into it. And okay, so now let's get to the actual day. I get to the September 11th. I drove a blue Mazda 626. It was I believe it was a 1984 1985 Mazda 626 blue. It didn't have any struts, and so whenever you hit a rock or a pothole or something, it would go up and down. Um, I so in Wisconsin, in the fall, we have days that are incredibly nice, which are like 75-degree days, and then the next day could be like 60 or 50. And I bring that up because on that day, it was really nice. It was, there wasn't a cloud in the sky. It looked amazing. It was going to be one of those things. I was on the football team, just like kind of what you do when you're a senior. Our football team was not very good. I think we won 3 games that entire season. Um, but okay, so let's actually get to it. Enough setting up and enough framing. Um, I'm sitting in the library, and we're just wasting time, waiting to get to the next period. And all of a sudden, one of the librarians comes running in. She yells, "Hey, a plane just hit the one of the towers." And you don't really think too much of it, because when someone says a plane hits the towers, it could mean anything. It could mean like, a little Cessna just kind of got wayward and ran into it. But the thing is back in those days, and 20 years ago, there weren't these little like flat screen TVs. They were giant CRTVs that were pushed in. Like this was probably like a 35 inch CRTV that weighed like 70 pounds, that she had to roll in front of us, and then unwind the cord, and then find an outlet and plug it in. And so you don't really grasp the gravity of the situation until you see it on TV. And so we're all just kind of sitting there. And if you know anything about history, you know that the towers were attacked with a bomb. They brought in, I believe, U-Haul trucks, and they bombed it. And so you don't really think too much of it. I know that's kind of callous to think, okay, so they tried it again. No big deal. And we're sitting there and watching it, and then we see another plane hit. And I think at that point, you just kind of realize it, like, this is different than anything that we've ever seen or heard or experienced before. And my generation's been through kind of like a lot, if you think about it. Again, I'm 37. We've seen a lot of stuff, which is kind of crazy. And so when you're thinking about this, you watch the second plane crash, and we're all just like glued to our seat. And again, my age range, we've seen the Oklahoma City bombing, we've seen multiple like catastrophes, and you kind of just got a sense that something was different. So I don't really remember how long we were there. Hey, Heather, how's it going? What I do remember is I remember teachers were crying and hugging each other. I remember students were crying and hugging each other. Students were talking about tapping out. Tapping out means they were going to go get their GED and go off to war. People were, screaming war, war, war. And another interesting thing happened is parents started to come and get their kids. which was surprising. Again, Kenosha is about 20 minutes away from Great Lakes Naval Base. And so you start to wonder and you start to think about this stuff. Parents are getting their kids, and these are military brats. You start to think, okay, so what's happening? It's good to hear that you're doing well, Heather. You start to wonder, like, so what's next? And again, we're in high school, so people are naturally emotional. We got people that are talking about how they're going to tap out and they're going to go enlist. They're going to go get their GED, and they're going to go enlist. Um, the school size probably shrunk by maybe a third that day because parents were getting their kids, people were just leaving. There was a lot of not knowing what to do. We were like in motion because we had to be in motion, but there was like nothing to do. And so, like I said, we were on the football team, and I just remember standing there, like thinking, why am I playing football when we're about to go through all of this? We just like you have no idea what to do. And oh, by the way, um, so how did this impact me? I have family that lives in Queens, New York. One of my oldest cousins was a garbage man for New York City. And I'm sure if you guys have watched any of the videos, you've watched any of the documentaries, like everything down in New York got shut down. And people couldn't call in, people couldn't call out. Again, this is a completely different time. This was before social media. This was before like 3G cell phone technology. This was before, apps where you could just tell people you were okay. I mean, this was the time where people had like bag phones, and they had the Nokia phone that had the snake game. And, if you were in the wrong place, you weren't going to get service. And so no one people are trying to call in, they're getting busy signals. People are trying to call out, they're getting busy signals. And so we had no idea how my cousin was doing, my oldest cousin. So that was like another layer. But it was just, it was one of those things where it was you started thinking about, okay, so what are they going to do next? Are they going to attack Chicago, which is about, if you drive like me, it's about a 45-minute drive. Are they going to attack the nuclear reactors? Because the nuclear reactors, while decommissioned, it's one of those things where that could be a pretty good problem and pretty big problem that would have a direct impact on where I live in Kenosha. So it was one of those things where it was really eye opening, and you start thinking about like dates and what's going to happen next. And you just kind of lived. I don't know. I don't think that as a person that lived in the Midwest and Wisconsin, I didn't didn't think that I was immune to global issues in terrorist attacks. It was like, okay, so now it's real. Now you gotta think about things like the nuclear reactors in Zion, or you gotta think about going to ball games and all this other stuff. So it was really eye opening. But like I said, so we go, and every room that we went into, we're watching TV, and they didn't have cable on the TVs, so it was like an antenna, and it was scratchy, and you're trying to squint and see and get information, and it was just like it was just a obviously it was a terrible situation. It was frustrating. It was, you're that was literally the day that my generation just kind of said, we're no longer, it's not going to be the white picket fence is probably the best way to put it, because our generation went through, you like the 2K thing, the .com bust, the housing market crash. We went through 9/11. We've gone through the pandemic, student loans, all this stuff. So it's just like this 9/11 thing is just really, it just boggled the mind, because you had no idea what to do. It was really interesting. And then so I'm gonna get back. Football was done. I leave, and again, I'm driving this blue Mazda 626, 1985, no struts, bouncing up and down the street. As I'm going home, I pass two gas stations. and the gas stations, there are cars wrapped around the block. And you know, I go home and ask my dad. I'm like, hey, so I just noticed lines are around the block. He says, everyone's anticipating that we're going to go to war, and when you go to war, um, they expected gas to either be, you know, reduced or be really expensive. At that time, I should also add, this is incredibly funny. At that time, gas was like 99 cents a gallon. Some places was like $1.29. Gas was so cheap that me and three of my friends, we would get $20 worth of gas and we would just drive around because we didn't really have anything to do. We would just drive around. Now gas I think was like 3.89 or 2.89. It was something, but gas was so cheap back then. You could just, eh, you know, we put $20 on pump 20, and you'd have money left over. Um, but that was kind of like that was the changing of the guard where everything just changed. Um, you had to be like kind of suspicious of everything. So we I'm driving home. Cars are wrapped around the block to park. And so, oh, about the naval base, like I mentioned, my mom used to work on the naval base. Um, at one point, they had like maybe five or six different gates, and you could just walk into the gates. And now, I mean, they've got it reduced to maybe a couple gates or a few gates. I haven't been down there in a while, but it's kind of a hassle to get in because we could literally you could just drive in. They would look at you, they would wave or salute, and you could just go about your business. So it was really like it kind of just changed everything. I used to do summer camps on the base, and without a care in the world, I'd walk around, play basketball. I actually got lost in that base once, and I was walking around trying to find my mom because most of the buildings looked the same. So it was like, your world got flipped upside down. But yeah, this is more of to help me remember 9/11 in 20 years. If I'm still around when I'm 57, I'm 37 now. Um, when I'm 57, but it was completely. I remember the lady running in and saying, "Hey, a plane just hit the World Trade Center." And you don't really think that doesn't mean anything when someone says it to you, because if you ever played Grand Theft Auto, you've accidentally flown a plane into a building. But when she wheeled out that giant that giant cart, and the cart's heavy, and she's like forcefully pushing it, and she plugged it in, and you see the smoke, and you're just like, this is different. Um, and we also, the other weird thing too, and my mind's maybe kind of morbid, but we used to over here in Kenosha, we used to have a smokestack, and on very windy days, the smokestack looked kind of like what happened with September 11th. So, you're it affected everyone differently, obviously, but I don't want to keep you guys too much longer. That's kind of how it impacted me and my family. We went from just kind of, I don't want to say a malaise. We understood and were aware of the threat or threats that were going on in the world, but it just kind of like on an instant, the whole thing changed. And then the rest of that year, anytime something happened, people would go wheel out that giant CRTV. They'd plug it in, because now you have to remember that whole rest of the year we're on high alert. Anytime something happens, like later that year, one of those tiny Cessnas flew into the FBI building in California. It was either in San Diego or LA. I don't remember exactly where, but someone wheeled out the giant thing to that. And I mean, now we're on high alert all the time, but anytime something happened, everyone would run to that giant TV, and it was only like a 35-inch TV, but it was like 300 pounds. Wheel it out, plug it in, and we would just sit there glued to the TV. I mean, this was before smartphones. Um, this was before even having a camera on the back of the phone. That's how old um, that's how old I am. We had little phones. I wish I had one. Little Nokia phones where you'd put minutes on the phone, or if you had a if before then you had one of those little car phones that had a bag, you'd plug the bag into the outlet in your car, and then you would have to dial it. You have to use a calling card and punch it in. That's how old I am. But September 11th really just kind of you lost at that time. I would say in that hour or two, you automatically went from a kid that was just kind of having fun and was ready to make the world your oyster to realizing like, hey, things are never going to be um, fun. Things are never going to be fun. Things are going to be hard because everything that you knew was much more difficult. So hey, I think that's all I have today. Thank you for hopping on. If you hopped on, thank you if you watched. But this is more of me reflecting and thinking about it. In the event 20 years from now I cannot recall, I'm sure 20 years from now I'll probably think of things that I didn't think of today. But I wanted to get the main points out that, we're right down the street from the Navy base. We're right down the street from a nuclear reactor. And in fact, that was probably poor planning, putting the nuclear reactor and the Navy base so close together. Maybe that was good planning. I don't know. And that Kenosha is almost, the southern end of Kenosha is a military town. Um, hey, thanks Heather, appreciate it. Um, yeah, Kenosha is kind of like a military town. A lot of people commute to the and the thing is, the Navy base isn't just the Navy base. There's the Navy base, and then there's government buildings. There's the VA hospital that's out there. Like all of maybe southern Waukegan is has like government buildings, important government buildings, and I've been in a bunch of them, and I've never been in the military. I watch these videos on stolen valor, so I want to make sure that I'm clear to let everyone know that I've never been in the military, never had an interest in serving. But that was the thing on September 11th. People started talking about being drafted, which was incredibly frightening. People were talking about tapping out. I think a few people did tap out, and parents came and got their kids. Military moms and dads came and got their kids, and I also believe that the naval base was on lockdown, so my mom couldn't leave. My dad couldn't go pick her up. Everyone was in a holding pattern. I would say all of southeastern Wisconsin and northern Illinois were in a giant holding pattern, trying to piece it together. I do remember seeing military airplanes flying around because you just didn't know. Nobody knew what was going on, and nobody really knew what to do. So, yeah, that's all I have today. I'm gonna go back to uploading regularly. Like I said, I was a little under the weather and we had some family stuff, but starting tomorrow, hopefully we'll go back to regular uploads. Thanks guys for hanging out, and I will see you tomorrow.